Today, I want to do a deep dive on Instagram stories. And before you come for me saying, wait, I thought this podcast was about LinkedIn, I need to give you a little update. If you haven't heard the previous episodes, I'm pivoting my business. I've been supporting more and more coaches whose main platform is Instagram. And while we're still posting on LinkedIn, the majority of their leads are actually coming from Instagram. So I'm changing the podcast to share more behind the scenes of what I'm actually supporting my clients with. So you can learn how to improve your marketing, whether you're showing up on multiple platforms using email marketing or focusing just primarily on Instagram. And today, I want to tell you the story of a client who I started working with in June. She's a new client who hired me because she couldn't stay consistent with her Instagram and email marketing. And I'm actually one of the first people she's hired to support her with this side of her business. Before we started working together, she was posting when she had a minute or when she felt inspired and sending emails to her list sporadically, which is actually really bad for email deliverability, something I'll cover on a separate episode. But one of the things that she really needed help with was having a consistent presence across her marketing. And so now we've been working together for a little over a month, meaning we started in June. So we posted on her feed consistently in July. We sent emails consistently in July. And in the beginning of August, she came to me saying, okay, well, I've noticed an uptick in my Instagram analytics. I've had people come to me and tell me how they love my Instagram feed and how they're getting my emails, but I'm not seeing really any significant sales. And I'm bringing this up today because she's not the first person that has come to me with this concern. I used to get it also when I was mainly helping consultants on LinkedIn. And I think we need to talk about what realistic expectations are when you're doing social media marketing. First of all, people buy when they're ready, not when you want them to buy. So just because you've started showing up consistently on your social media platforms a few weeks ago and you're ready to make sales doesn't mean that your audience is ready to buy from you. And this is why consistency and messaging matters so much because that consistent presence gives people time to get to know you, to become familiar with your offer, to understand what you do, to see what your values are, who you help, and how you help your clients, and whether they actually trust you enough to buy from you. So, the fact that my clients' analytics had improved and that people were starting to mention her content offline, that's actually a really good sign. It means people are paying attention, they're noticing her, which is the first stage of marketing results. And that's the very first thing that you should expect to see when you start taking your marketing seriously and showing up more consistently. I used to get this same comment off of consultants that I would support on LinkedIn. Their first signal that their marketing is working is that people are noticing their peers, their former clients, and people in their network are reaching out to say, hey, your content looks amazing. Good job. So that is the first signal that your content is making a difference. Now, the difference between LinkedIn Instagram is that Instagram has stories which can fast track the relationship with your clients. And that's why I want to talk about stories specifically today because that's exactly the same advice I gave to my client. I told her, okay, let's start to leverage stories. Like the response is good. Let's fast track the parasocial relationship with your audience and start showing up on stories more frequently because your feed posts and your stories have different purposes. Your feed is where people can discover you, it's where people who aren't familiar with your brand find you. They might see one of your reels, think your content is interesting, and then want to know more about you. So they'll click on your profile. And if your stories are recent, they will click on your stories to get to know you better and build a personal connection. The people who watch your stories are your most engaged audience. It's people who already follow you and want to get to know you. And the cool thing about stories is that once people respond to any one of your stories, it initiates a private DM chat. So, a private conversation where you can build more rapport with your audience. Also, when people respond to your stories, your content content will show higher up on their feed. So the more engagement you get through stories, the more you will show up in your audience's feed. Now, these are people who are already following you, but it's important for them to repeatedly see your content for them to develop an interest in wanting to buy from you. And this is important because people buy when they're ready. It's not common for people to just see an Instagram post and decide, oh, I want to hire you or I want to purchase your offer. There's a lot that happens in between. They need to understand how you specifically can help them, and they need to know if they even like you enough to hire you. So they need to be exposed to your content for a little while to develop interest in what you do and to see if they actually need what you offer. And so in stories, you can build that rapport that goes beyond just talking about your services. It shows who you are as a person, what your values are, what your personality is like, and it creates a connection that makes people like you. And when people like you, they tend to trust you more, which eventually will lead to a sale. So, what I told my client to do is start showing up more consistently on stories. And stories are really easy. Like, you don't have to think about them like you would your content. You can start just showing a little bit of a behind the scenes as to your daily life and routine. For example, my client shared on stories what she was having for breakfast. Now, she is a plant based energy healer. So her breakfast and food choices make sense with the work that she's doing. And it creates intrigue. It's like, oh, that looks interesting. What is that breakfast? How do you make it? What does it taste like? I want to try it too, right? That curiosity, that behind the scenes peek at how she lives her life is great for building relationship with her audience. It's what you call a parasocial relationship, which is how people feel about you from seeing you represented online. So, if you're wanting to show up on stories, here's what you should post. You can simply show people a little bit of what's happening in your day to day life. You choose what you're comfortable posting, and you can layer in like moments from your day, like what you're eating or how you're taking a break from work. You can also show what you're working on to remind people what your main offer is. And you can answer questions that you may have received, or you can share client testimonials to show that you actually deliver on your promise. So basically, you can intersperse little random snippets of your day with a little bit of a reminder of what you do as a service provider and social proof that proves that your clients are satisfied with how you help them. Now you can get more elaborate, but if you're just starting out, I would just keep it low key, share maximum 3 stories per day. They don't have to be videos. You can post a photo with text on screen, so that gives you a little bit more control as to what people see if you're not comfortable talking to the camera yet. And so think of your stories as a mix of entertaining, educational, and personal content. So show behind the scenes of how you spend your day, the boring, mundane stuff that people love. It's like your own private reality show. And then you sprinkle in things about your business, what you're working on, who you're helping, and how you're helping them. And you also need to remember that you can't assume that your audience knows about everything you do, especially when it comes to business. For example, I had somebody who hired me to write blog content for her, and then she saw in my stories that I also do sales pages and asked me for a quote to write a sales page for her, right? So just because I'm showing up in my feed and talking about my main offer doesn't mean that people know the ins and outs of everything that I do for clients as a copywriter. So, stories is a great way to reinforce the details of what you do for clients. And documenting what you're working on naturally in your stories helps showcase the full range of your offers. And so back to my client and back to you if you feel like your content isn't getting the traction it deserves. It's probably not that you're doing anything wrong, especially if you're already getting that feedback from people in your inner circle. You just want to continue to leverage the visibility you're already getting by building a closer relationship with the people who already follow you, and stories is a great way to do that. So, to recap, if you've been avoiding stories because you don't know what to post, make it real simple. Just show what you're doing throughout the day, document your day, answer questions that you get from clients, share a little bit of a client win, Give us a glimpse into your world so that people can feel like they know you a little bit better. And because stories expire in 24 hours, you don't need to think about it so deeply. It can be more rough around the edges type content. It's what people expect. It gives them the sense that they are part of your inner circle and that they get to peek into your world. So I hope you found this podcast useful. I'd love to hear your thoughts. On Spotify, you can leave me a comment. So let me know what you thought of this episode and what you'd like me to cover in future shows. Thanks so much for listening and have a great week.